This video is sponsored by JL Gardenet, the makers of a high-quality floral tool belt.
Over the next week, we are going to be flipping the field to get ready for fall crops. Right now, it is the day after the 4th of July. It is humid, it is hot, it's high 80s right now, but it literally feels like it's almost 100. My glasses are fogging up. It is not a fun time to be outside. And honestly, this is the less glamorous part of flower farming. I had some friends come over today and they were like, there's so many bugs, it's so hot. And it's like, yeah, this is the bad side of flower farming that no one likes to glamorize, but I'm here to show you what I'm going to be doing. So I am walking to the field right now. We've got to do some mowing, we've got to do some compost turning, but more importantly, we've got to clean up this field. So what that looks like is taking a hedgerow trimmer, trimming down all of the yarrow, some of the feverfew, and hoping that we can get a fall flush out of them. It means moving some of the spent lily crates out of the way. It means doing some weeding, ripping out the bells of Ireland so that we can put in new plugs that are coming in next week. There's a lot to do, and I'm going to take you along for the ride.
I love my handy dandy push mower that was given to me by my dad. We go through about 3 passes through the perimeter of the field and then we're done. As I was mowing, Eric was turning the compost pile. We should be turning this pile a little bit more often. I would say right now it's every 10 days. Realistically, we should be turning it at least every 3 or 4 days to get enough aeration into the pile. But having a tractor makes this job so much easier because when you have a big pile, it gets really, really heavy to hand turn it.
Since I know many of you are either beginner flower farmers or considering doing something like this, I want to quantify the effort and time for certain recurring chores such as mowing. Now you can see I practice regenerative farming. I don't use landscape fabric, mainly because I just don't like the fact that it degrades and it breaks down. So I use a lot of wood chips as well as grass perimeter pathways. Now one of the things I considered before was, should I do grass pathways in the aisles instead of wood chips? It's actually starting to rain now, which is kind of nice. But I decided against grass because I didn't want it to be so time intensive for me to mow. And it was a good decision because mowing doesn't take that long, but I do have to do it at least once every 5 days during the height of summer. And when I'm just doing a perimeter, it really just takes under 10 minutes, which is really nice. And if I had the individual walkways, it would obviously not only take me a lot longer, but the grass would also potentially be creeping into the aisles, which is what is kind of happening along the perimeter. So I think that when you have grass pathways, you have to be very, very mindful about not having the weeds creep into the growing space. So it is starting to come down hard now. I'm going to dash inside. So the last task that I am determined to do today before the day ends is trim down this yarrow. I've got basically almost a full row of yarrow here, another row of yarrow over there, and feverfew that I'm just going to use a head trimmer to trim down, but then I'm going to pick up the pieces that are trimmed down, put it into a wheelbarrow, and then put it into the compost pile. Damn it, I forgot my clippers. If only you had a tool belt like this that could hold your clippers, maybe you wouldn't be in this situation. Who are you? I am just your more efficient farming self, but with Eric's hat. I love this tool belt because it is made out of durable and high-grade leather. It helps me hold my snips in here. I can even hold some rubber bands because I know how efficient you are. You like to cut, bunch, and wrap directly in the field. If you're not wearing overalls, you can even put your phone in here. There are 3 pockets in here, and overall it is really easy to take on and off. The strap is completely adjustable. You know, I really do like the look of that flower belt. Does it come in other sizes? I personally like this small size. There is also a bigger option where you can put your keys and have a few more pockets to hold some other stuff in case if you've got more than one snip. So head on over to Amazon because you can actually prime this and get this within 2 days and make your harvesting life so much easier and not have to walk back and forth. All right, but I don't have a couple of days. Can I get that tool belt from you right now? Feeling generous today, so why not? Here you go. Well, I guess now we can get back to the original programming because I would love to have these snips to cut down some of the yarrow that I didn't get with the head trimmer. So here we go again.
All kidding aside, I really do love this flower belt. In fact, I am very picky about who I choose to promote in my videos. And so when this person reached out to me, I really wanted to do my due diligence to make sure that the story was one that I believed in and it was a product that I liked. So I've been testing it for a few weeks, really loved the durability. And when I spoke to the owner, she was someone who really loved the look of the flower belt, but felt that the price range was a little bit too high. So she wanted to bring down that cost. She was actually previously using a nylon floral belt, which worked really well for her, but she didn't like how it was falling apart pretty easily after one season and thought that leather could actually change that. So I thought it was really cool that this one person took this idea that she had and actually implemented it. She worked with a leather manufacturer, she chooses the leather and made it come to life. So again, you can find this on Amazon. I have both the small and the big versions to try, and personally right now I like using the small versions for day-to-day tasks, but when I go out for things like a flower bouquet bar, I am actually using the bigger version because it can carry a little bit more stuff. Now I will say that the waist is made for more of the small to medium sized waist, so if you are someone who is dressing at large to extra large, you may want to double check to make sure that it will fit you.
So now we're going to repeat what we just did on this patch, which is actually a first year patch that I had divided from the last patch. And I know that some of these look like they're just about to flower, but this time of year, the blooms are just not quality. Basically, they flower and they start to set seed almost immediately. So just going to chop and drop them right now.
Let's talk about this method that I'm deploying here with the yarrow. It's called a Chelsea chop, and it comes from the Brits because they do it around the time of the annual Chelsea flower show in May. But here in the US, we actually do it around the 4th of July because if you cut the plants down any later, you're really not going to give them enough of a chance to recover and bloom before the fall. And the entire idea is that we're pruning the plant back down about to 1/3 of its original height to allow it to flower again in the fall. Now, this is a pruning technique that is especially suited for perennials that get pretty tall and leggy. So yarrow is a great example here. You can see that my yarrow was reaching 2 feet, sometimes even 3 feet, and I'm also going to be doing this with the Feverfew.
It is now Saturday, way later in the day. It's close to 6 p.m. We woke up and there was smoke outside because there happened to be some wildfires a little bit north of us. Luckily, it was small and it was contained, but you could smell the smoke. It was so hot. In fact, it felt like it was 102 degrees. So decided to do some indoor work and now I am out. So we've got a bit of cleanup to do. What I actually want to do today is I want to get rid of all of the bells of Ireland because we've got plugs coming in next week, and then I want to be able to put those plugs into the beds where the bells of Ireland are. Now yesterday I didn't get a chance to complete taking down the yarrow and the feverfew in the back over there. I'm actually going to keep that for a few more days just because I don't have a ton of stuff flowering outside of the sea holly over there, which is a pollinator attractor. There's not much else that's flowering, and so I want the pollinators as well as the beneficials to have something to feed off of. So that's why I'm going to keep that there for a little bit longer, and in the meantime we're going to work on the bells.
You may be wondering why I am clipping down the bells of Ireland to its base versus ripping out the entire plant with the root system and composting it. And the reason is because there's a lot of great soil activity that is happening within those root systems. So if I transplant new plugs in between those living roots, those new plugs will benefit from all that microbial activity. Now, this is why regenerative farming typically happens on a much smaller scale because you can see how manually intensive this is. If you had a much bigger type of field, one thing you could consider is taking a machine and basically brush hogging it and then tilling in all of that organic matter into the soil. Of course, there is tilling happening and disruption of the soil aggregates, but at the end of the day, at least you are still incorporating organic matter back into the soil. So this is one way of keeping organic matter in the soil without disturbing those soil aggregates and allowing nature to do its own thing in terms of breaking down the roots naturally over time and not necessarily killing all of that soil life that is happening around those roots.
That wasn't too bad. It took just a little under 20 minutes. I forgot I have some curcuma growing in there. This is a completely new crop. It's like an Asian tulip. So I have some that are a little bit further along the way. I think the ones that were in between the bells are a little bit less further off because obviously they were shaded. But let me show you what they look like because this is pretty exciting. So they are all starting to put on good leaf growth, and I think that in a couple of weeks, I will start seeing flowers pop up. So pretty excited for this. Moonshot Farms literally just started growing these, getting usable blooms, and they look awesome. So I'm pretty excited for that too. I also completely forgot that I had garlic in these rows, and they actually look pretty good given how shaded out they were. I mean, look at this. This is awesome. So garlic has been a great crop for me because obviously we use a lot of garlic in our home cooking, but I've also been selling the scapes to designers. So this year I pulled the scapes a little bit too early. Next year I will definitely let the scapes go a little bit longer, and it's a little bit more desirable for designers when the scapes are a tad bit longer. So yeah, I'm going to be planting more garlic for that reason. Next up, I'm going to do the same in the other bed with the Bells of Ireland. I'm going to keep some in because we are going to be trying to make a lot of bouquets for a local food bank in the upcoming week, and I think some of them might actually still be good for that purpose. So we're not going to take all of them, but we're going to do a lot of cleanup in the longest bed of Bells of Ireland.
You can see that I am also weeding along the way, but one noticeable difference between this bed and the other bed was the fact that there was significantly less weed pressure. Now, in the areas where I had harvested the Bells of Ireland, obviously now the sun is peeking in through those gaps, and so those weeds are taking off. But for the most part, the weed pressure in this bed was very, very manageable, and that's because I put a significant layer of chopped leaves on this bed during the fall. I find that if you can prep your beds with leaves in the fall, you can really help mitigate the weed pressure, especially in the spring and early summertime. Good morning, Chance.
It is now a cloudy but very muggy Sunday morning. Finally had the motivation to wake up a little bit earlier and beat the heat. So we've got a couple of things that we need to do. Before I take you along those chores, I want to talk about something that I try to do every single morning. Sometimes it's a bit difficult because I have to rush out and go to work. But this time of year, there are some things that really put on a lot of growth and need to be deadheaded. So let me show you what I'm talking about. One new crop that I've tried this year is Scoop Scabiosa. This is different from the Scabiosa that you get from seed. It's the patented variety, which means you can't grow these from seed. You have to buy them in as cuttings. Now, I bought 100 of them. Something ate about 70 of them, kicked them out of the ground, and they basically died. So I have 30 left, and every day, starting since about 2 weeks ago, they've been just popping open during the mornings, and I go into the house at night with none of these colored up. I mean, I would say they're probably around this stage when I'm going inside. So I'm deadheading every single day, but you can see even with 30 plants, I am getting quite a bit of production out of these. So you can also see over here, there's still a little bit more. So even though it's only 30 plants, it's actually bunch of maintenance in the morning to make sure I'm cutting these because you want to continue encouraging growth. So you have to basically deadhead and continuously cut so that the flower knows that it needs to make more bloom heads. Now, I don't have significant use for these. Obviously, these will go into retail bouquets for the country store, but I don't need like, I don't know, 15, 20 on a given day. So sometimes I'll enjoy them, sometimes I give them away, but it's more just the practice of actually cutting them down to make sure that they remain prolific for you. And it is honestly a little bit time consuming, but I would rather have that than plants that don't produce. The other thing I try to make time for in the morning is doing a pest walk. It doesn't happen every single morning, but every single week, at least 3 times in the morning, I'm spending a good 20 minutes going through and taking a look at just what pests exist. So I'm going at eye level with the plants. I'm going through my lilies to see if the scarlet lily beetle is there, and if it is, I try to knock it into a bucket of water. But the point is that I want to know what's going on in my field. And so things even like our Japanese beetle, I know what they look like in younger stage. I know what they look like when they're about to mature. And what it does is it gives me a much better handle on just what to expect in the future. And obviously also try killing as many of them as possible manually, which isn't possible to completely eradicate them. But it's better to know now what you're going to deal with than be surprised later because you haven't put in that homework yet to look at the pests. I personally believe that pest management is very under-discussed, undervalued even. And it's one of those things where for beginner growers, you don't know what you don't know. And I wish I knew a little bit earlier on to pay a little bit more attention to those pests. And instead of just saying, hey, let's spray this or that, to really get to know life cycles and just what pests persist in your field, because they are typically always recurring for the next year. So if you don't know how to resolve it this year appropriately, chances are you're going to hit the same challenge next year. And so I think that a lot of beginner flower farmers, they end up struggling with, hey, I can grow something really well, but something is eating them. And I think one of the best things you can do as a beginner grower is to just observe what is flying around, what is on the plants during every month of the growing season, because life cycle of pests is always changing. There are certain pests that are more acclimated to cooler temperatures, warmer temperatures, different types of humidity. And if you can nail down like the 20% of the of the pests that are going to do 80% of damage, you're going to be well on your way to having a better growing season. All right, so enough talk right now. I want to show you something else that I do. This is more on maybe like a every 6-week type of basis. So we collect all of our food waste into these 5-gallon buckets. There's actually 2 5-gallon buckets stacked on top of each other. And we do something called the Bokashi method, which is really a pickling fermentation method of expediting food breaking down. We put the food into the buckets, we put this bran on, and then we let it sit for a while. This time of year when it's so hot outside, the expediting of the breaking down of the food happens a lot more quickly. So what that means is that I'm constantly trying to bury the food as quickly as possible. We also have my in-laws here, I mentioned, for a few weeks, and my mother-in-law actually eats a ton of fresh foods. So the bucket builds up quite quickly, and we end up actually filling up 2 buckets typically whenever they stay for a given 3-week period of time. This time they're here for 5 weeks. So it's great because that means I get to amend my beds. Now, the process of Bokashi means I do need to dig a trench. And so yesterday, even though I was trying to preserve the roots of the bells of Ireland to allow some more of the soil life happening down there, I will have to disturb some of that, which is totally fine. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to basically dig a trench down the bells of Ireland road that I clipped off yesterday, bury this Bokashi waste, and typically you want to give it like 10 to 14 days before you transplant something on top. I've done it before where I only waited maybe about like 4 days and it was completely fine. So I have plugs coming in next week that are going into this row, which is why I want to get it done right now. I'm going to show you what happens.
Somehow me opening the lid of the bucket didn't record, but basically you're just gonna see food that is decomposing, and there might even be a white mold, which is actually a good sign because that's a beneficial type of mold, and it's showing you that the Bokashi process is working properly. You don't want to see blue, green, or black mold. That is typically a sign of too much aerobic activity or oxygen happening, and you can still bury that food waste, but of course it's not great mold. It will still break down over time. Now, I have seen really great benefits with this. I have seen a lot more productivity in the rows where I am amending it. So that's why I continuously do this, and it is a great way to recycle our food waste.
So that's it, pretty quick. I have a full video dedicated to Bokashi composting. In case if you are interested, I will link it in the notes below. But for now, let's actually, oh God, there is just so much bug pressure right now. They're like flying everywhere. But right now I'm gonna do some more cleanup and make sure all of the spent lilies are pulled out. Get off. Yeah, got it.
I am pulling out the lilies here, and this was a bed where previously I had grown tulips back over the winter into April. The lilies came up and now this bed is ready to be flipped, so I am getting it ready for a new crop. But as you can see, there is a lot of weeding that happens. I am not going to sugarcoat this. The weeding this year has been exponentially better though than last year. I spent a significant more amount of time weeding last year, and I do think that regenerative practices are starting to pay its dividends for me. I have been mulching a lot more heavily in the aisles, but I also have been doing a lot more intercropping, which also means that I am doing weed management when I am putting in new plugs. So overall, I am spending probably about 20% of the time that I spent last year on weeding, but there is still a portion of time that I do need to dedicate every single week to weeding in order to keep up with the field.
It is around 8:15. My child, I think, is stirring in her bed. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go deadhead those Scabiosas and then see how she's doing through her monitor, and then we'll go from there. But it's very likely that morning chores will be done after I deadhead. This is the results of the deadheading. There's, I think, 17 of these scoops in here. They look so awesome. One thing about harvesting is I actually wasn't sure when to harvest them at first. My post-harvesting book didn't really give that much detail, but it did say harvest when 1/3 of the leaves are unfurled. And it's like, what's 1/3? Because Scabiosa can be so fluffy and layery. So I talked with another grower, and actually talk with 2 other growers, and basically you want to harvest at this stage because it will maximize the vase life. It will continue opening, and if you harvest too late, I'm trying to find you an example of it. Like this is one that is probably maybe a day or half a day too late, where it starts getting the white on here. And I know a lot of people harvest at this stage, but for certain colors, what you end up seeing, there's an ant on there. For certain colors, what you end up seeing is that it actually starts turning tan and it doesn't maintain its vibrancy. So this stage is actually really, really good overall. And I'm actually gonna put these into the cooler and see how they look in a few days, because we're gonna be making a massive amount of bouquets for the local food bank. I also want to show you a double lily. This one's called Accolade. It's a rose lily, so it's an oriental trumpet hybrid that has been bred to have these double layers. Rose lilies are technically not even a variety. It's like a patented brand name. So look at this. Isn't this so cool? If you bought Accolade bulbs from me, this is what it looks like. This is going to open up, and it's one of those stems where, especially for retail customers, they're like, what is this? And I'm even getting requests from florists to say, hey, are you going to have these in a couple of weeks? So I will have other types of rose lilies, but I've been harvesting these a little bit earlier because I can hold them in the cooler for a good 2 weeks and keep them outside and let them open slowly over time. So these have an incredible vase life and versatility because of the many layers that they have. And the other thing is I've been getting a bit of bug pressure. So you'll see that the bottom of this petal over here is chewed up, and what you can do is obviously you can just take it off. So because there's so many layers, you get a lot more flexibility with something like a rose lily versus a single lily. And let me show you what I'm talking about here. So this stem over here also has some damage. If you look over here, this got chomped on by probably the lily beetle, and it's a pretty decent chomp. But number one, because there are literally 4 buds on here, I could just clip this one off, but I could also wait for it to open a bit and then take off the outer petals, and it still makes it sellable to florists because the imperfections are not in there. So there's a lot of little creatures today that are loving the flowers.
While Eric was mowing, I was getting dinner ready, and we are having Korean fried chicken tonight. Even got to use some of the garlic that we harvested yesterday. I know it's a little bit too early, but we like the mild garlic flavor in this recipe. I know a lot of you really like me putting in some of the cooking segments in the behind the scenes of a week of vlog. So doing that for you today, and this is one of our favorite meals. So looking forward to this tonight.
Good morning, everyone. We have about an hour-ish before I have to head back inside and get ready because I have a 9 a.m. meeting on the dot. Working from home today means I have the flexibility to actually come outside and do some stuff. We're not going to do anything major. We're actually going to just do more like some hand weeding, tidying up because we do have those plugs coming in this week. But I'm in this like weird in-between zone where there's certain things I do want to rip out, but I just need a few more days because I still want to harvest from them. And the other thing was I was intending on hacking down this Feverfew over here. And what I'm starting to realize is that they actually put up a second bloom. So what happened was back in June, this is about a month ago, I had spotted thrips on them. And so I immediately cut off the bloom heads, and I didn't expect this, but they actually flowered almost immediately after, and there are no thrips on there. Even though they're flowering on secondary shoots, there is enough stem length where I can actually make these work in bouquets. And this would be a game changer for the food pantry donations because I can make a lot more bouquets off these. So I think what I'm gonna do is I'm going to basically prune as I cut them for those bouquets. And then I'm just gonna work on the yarrow. So I might actually do a little bit of the yarrow work this morning. You can see that some of them are leaning over, so it makes it a little bit more difficult for something like a hedge trimmer, and I might just manually do it by hand. Of course it doesn't fit. All right, we gotta change the wires up. So this is frustrating because I don't know where Eric put the longest extension cord. The 2 extension cords I'm trying to connect don't connect. And then like one's a 3-prong, one's a 2-prong. So anyway, I cannot do what I wanted to do here with the hedge trimmer. Back to manual weeding for like 10 minutes, and I just wasted like 15 minutes trying to do this. But that's what happens when you don't plan ahead. So I ended up doing some hand weeding. You can see how sweaty I am within like 15 minutes. And I got a lot further than I thought. So this entire area has been hacked down. There's a little bit of weeding that I need to do, but now we've got this patch, which really isn't that bad. I could probably knock it out in like 15 minutes without the hedge trimmer. So a bit of a 101 on the hedge trimmer. I ended up using a chainsaw the other day because it's electrical. It's cordless electrical. This hedge trimmer, the orange one that I have, is not cordless, and that's exactly why I didn't use it. But then Eric got mad at me because he said it was going to gum up his chainsaw, which it really didn't, but it's his tool, so I have to abide by his rules. So yeah, so I think that it's actually, that's my alarm to make sure that I know to go in. But yeah, so we've got some more work to do, and I am determined to clean up weed aisle over here by the crates. One thing about weeds is that even though they obviously are plants that help photosynthesize and do good in that regard for soil health and stuff, they also harbor pests, which is a hard lesson that I've learned. So that's why I also try to stay on top of weeds for that reason. And you just want to fetch, right? It's time to head on inside, but I think it's really important to note the frustration that I have with wasting even something like 15 minutes. And it's because you can get a lot done in 15 minutes. It's all of these fragmented minutes that really add up, which is why it's so hard to do this if you're off farm. But if you're on farm and you work from home and you can take those 15-minute breaks and go outside, you can get a ton done versus trying to lump everything into a couple of hours. And so I heavily rely on these fragmented times to get things done because I don't have stretches of hours to do things. So I just want to make it clear as to why I'm frustrated with something like this. And look, it's totally my fault because I could have prepared last night knowing that I was going to wake up a little bit earlier to beat the sun, and I didn't. So it's completely on me that I didn't look at the extension cord and look at how that machine works. So lesson learned for next time.
It sometimes blows people's minds when I tell them that I don't have irrigation set up. You can see that I am manually hand watering my flowers here, which is definitely time intensive, but I find that for most of the stuff that's in the ground and mature in the field, I don't actually need to water it that much. The only exception is if something is in seedling stage, at which point I will take care to water it at least for the first 3 days after transplant. I find that here in New Jersey, I typically get a dry spell now in June where I have to water a little bit more, but once we hit July, we start getting thunderstorms typically about once a week, which does also help. Now, one of the things I do appreciate about hand watering, which is something that Charles Dowding also points out, is the fact that it makes me pay attention to my plants a bit more closely. I'm spending a little bit more time, and that allows me to potentially troubleshoot things that I may miss because things are automated. So sometimes there are benefits to doing things manually.
They're back there?
One was here.
They can eat all they want over here. It's dill. I don't think they're gonna eat dill. Cosmos. Maybe they chomped off some cosmos. They didn't touch the Lisianthus, which is nice. Yeah, I don't really see. Yeah.
It must not have been in here very long.
Go Chance. Look at my onions.
Huh?
Look at my onions. Look how good they are.
Is this all dill?
Bro, this is Cosmos.
Oh, it looks like dill.
I think we're good.
Would you like more? Okay.
Everyone just got back from work. It's like 4:40 p.m. right now. Some exciting stuff to show you. Hi, Chance. We've got plugs which arrived today. I told Eric they were en route and he didn't have to unbox them, but he did, which is really, really nice. So these are 2 trays of quartet stock. This is a bit of an experiment, hoping I can get something for the fall. And then we have marigold, which I think should do well, although I put a couple of marigold outside and it got chomped down by something. So we'll see what happens. I'm still deciding what to put out today, but I do want to get at least 1 tray in the ground.
Here goes another experiment with stock this season. If you caught my interplanting with stock video back in April, I did actually get some successful stems of stock, but not as many as I wanted. So here we go with experiment number 2. I am determined to get a high quantity of usable, sellable stock stems. So this time I am growing stock quartet, which is not a one and done, but rather it actually has many side shoots that you can use as sellable stems. So I plan on using shade cloth in order to get through the hottest part of July, and then hopefully at which point it will start cooling down at night and allow it to give me fall blooms.
All right, got that done within 20 minutes. I am literally dripping. I am soaked. It is so humid. It's about 98 degrees right now, but I wanted to get this in because last time I waited to put in plugs and maybe about like fifth of my plugs died because I would leave them out, forget to water them, so forth. So they're in. It's supposed to rain in about 10 minutes, unexpected rain. It's not going to be a lot. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to put some rebar along the row over here, put some irrigation piping, which is my makeshift hoops, and then put some shade cloth on there tomorrow morning. So this is stock quartet. Stock is typically a cooler type of crop, but stock quartet can thrive under more hot conditions. And I find that typically when seedlings are in their younger stages, they can actually tolerate a little bit more heat, even if they're cool living. The goal is to get these to flower sometime in like September. So we're gonna see how that goes. We're gonna shade cloth it and then go from there. We just finished working out. It drizzled, so the rain was a bit of a letdown, but we're scrounging tonight, so we have leftovers, and that means I have about a 30-minute window before dinner, and I would love to get that tray of marigolds in because I think they could do okay, even given the heat tomorrow. I'm gonna make sure they're watered in really, really well, but I wanna get those plugs in ASAP. These plugs are definitely getting root bound and need to go in.
This is my first time growing marigolds for cut flower production. In the past, I've only grown them as companion plants for tomatoes. Last year, marigolds did really well at my cooperative, surprisingly to me, but most growers were growing particularly the orange and yellow varieties. There was a grower who did grow some of the whites, but she said it wasn't as productive and it was overtaken by the Japanese beetles. So now that I'm planting them out in July, I should be able to skip the life cycle of those Japanese beetles when they start flowering, because it will be about 45 days from now. And I'm hoping that I will be able to get a productive white flush, but we'll see.
So it's actually an hour later, not half an hour. Got all the marigolds in, deadheaded, the Scabiosa, still producing quite a bit, and now it's time for dinner. You can see how sweaty I am. I'm gonna take a shower first. I'm also sweating through my overalls again.
Good morning. We've got a little bit more of harvesting to do, and then I'm going to make the few bouquets that will ultimately get dropped to the country store. I have to go into the office today. Eric has a very early morning too, so these bouquets actually may not get dropped until afternoon, but I just want them made, and so we're going to do that right now. I am getting so much better and faster at making mixed bouquets, and the secret is allowing myself a couple more stems of filler, which not only allows me to bulk up the bouquet, but also gives it a higher perceived value. And I actually think it's worth the extra stems because it saves me a lot of time from futzing around.
Good morning. We've got a CSA pickup this morning, and I didn't even get a chance to do any deadheading yesterday because it was such a busy day. So I've got a lot of harvesting to do right now. We're gonna do that quickly, and then we're gonna end this video by making those CSA vase arrangements, and I'm going to show you an aerial overview of what the field looks like right now. We didn't get everything that I had wanted to accomplish, but we got quite a bit, so I'm pretty happy with the amount of progress that took place over the past week, as you've been seeing in this vlog. I just finished harvesting and taking some lilies that I stashed in the cooler for this week. I was waiting to be able to use some of these amazing double rose lilies for the CSA subscription. Now, everyone who signed up knew that I specialize in lilies, and I even asked them, do you want fragrant or not fragrant? They're like, give me all the fragrant lilies. So these are all the fragrant ones. There's only one non-fragrant in here, and we're gonna make this a bit of like a pinky theme type of vase arrangement, and I can't wait. It's so nice that all these doubles are coming in. This is double fantasy, by the way, if you bought bulbs from me. And then I also have an example of Accolade, which is over here. And that was from one of the earlier secessions. But you can see they start off a little bit more pale, even white, and then they really color up and they look so amazing. I'm finding that rose lilies, even if people don't like lilies, as long as they don't get a migraine with the smell, they're loving them because they're so big, ruffly, and delectable.
As you can tell, July is not the most fun month on a flower farm here in the Northern Hemisphere, and I know a lot of you might want to give up, but I promise that if you can power through the next month and a half, you will be rewarded in the fall. Fall also happens to be really busy for us, especially in the floral event industry world, so I want to make sure that I am ready for that. Now, I want to thank JL Gardenet again for sponsoring this video. This is a floral tool belt built by a flower farmer for fellow flower farmers. I've been using it the entire week and I've loved it. I didn't even get a chance to mention that the founder is a horticulturist by trade and is also starting her own little cut flower garden. So she's been using this tool belt for over a year and constantly iterating on it. And again, if you're interested in it, I have a link in the description below where you can prime it on Amazon. So thank you again for following me along for this entire week, and hopefully you learned something from it. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments below, and I'll see you in the next video.